Hello, everybody. After multiple weeks of being sick, I am finally free to stream again, although it's still kind of congested. So you're getting my hashtag sick voice. I hope it blesses your ears like Uruha Rushia's metal screams did. I don't know how much longer I'm going to sound like this, but I'm thinking it might be a while because it's been literally 2 weeks and my whole family is kind of still coughing and hacking a little bit, but I'm doing well enough that I can like doodle and talk to you guys. So something I've been thinking about recently is the last time I did like a watercolor painting stream, or one of the last times, which was where I painted this character that I wanted to look like a tree. And at the time, I was thinking dead tree. I might still do that. But something else I've been thinking about is she looks sort of like a deer, and deer live in the forest. I think of the forest as a place that really represents a lot of life because there's trees, there's fruits, there's animals, there's fungi, there's the whole thing where things come to life and then they decay and then they become nutrients for new life. So, what I might do is have a character who looks kind of like a deer, but also like a tree, and so represents forest. And through that, they represent like the life in the forest and life cycles because I think that's really cool. I see other characters with this sort of vibe too. Like if you've ever seen Xerneas from Pokemon X and Y, it's the Pokemon that represents life, like a living ecosystem, and that's very, very clearly designed to look like a deer. There it might be for a different reason. There's there's the magical, I don't know if it's technically called a deer, but it's one of those kind of animals called Eikthremir in Norse mythology who probably inspired it. But again, deer also kind of look like trees. They have their antlers on their heads that even get like nature caught on them. So that's the various influences that I'm thinking about this character. I have not thought of a name for her yet, unfortunately. I've drawn her a lot, but if you like haven't seen her before, I'll do like a quick drawing of her. So she's this character that I want to look sort of eerie, but not like evil, and overall like a tree. It's like exaggerated proportions, really long limbs, really long torso, things like that. I imagine her kind of standing on tiptoe, like a cat. And I'm not necessarily going for like a perfect drawing here. I'm just trying to show you the general vibes. I've also drawn her a lot. Originally, I was going to have her represent death, like the Grim Reaper. But as I keep playing with these story ideas, I think that that might not work. It might work better to have her represent like the whole life or death cycle. And overall, there's just a lot of ideas and shapes and like themes that I want to cover. Last time I was painting her, the only color scheme that I felt like really worked for her and sold the vibe I was going for was brown, make her look like a tree, even though that doesn't really read as like a dead tree. So that's where I started thinking about this whole life cycle stuff. I imagine her moving around like a marionette or a cat. So if you need like a movement reference for some reason, that's what you look at. I want to give her like really long hands and feet too to really sell this vibe. I'm thinking of how trees almost look like limbs. The next couple times I paint her, I might not do as detailed of a sketch beforehand, but I want to show you all what she looks like. The overall thing I'm thinking about with this character is I don't want her to look like evil, at least not right now. I want her to look kind of spooky, like you'd be like unsettled if you saw her for the first time, but she wouldn't hurt you. I haven't drawn. You know what? I think I should get out a reference of the last time I drew her antlers, because otherwise I make it look really bad. Second, okay. Okay, like this. Usually I draw her having hair that almost looks like a wisp, but I might make it look like wild foliage, you know? Maybe it like catches on her antlers. Okay. It almost looks a little bit like wind to her hair. And I might keep that up to show like wind blowing through the trees. I really like how I drew her face the last time, so I'm trying to keep that up. I might try making her eyes look a little like a deer's too, where they're really big and dark. I used to draw her with freckles, but I might not keep those. I might also try things like giving her really exaggerated lashes or like less quote unquote normal facial features. Because right now I feel like those help ground her a lot and they help show that she's like not evil, she's just kind of here. And I like that, but I might also try some things just to see, would making her look more unsettling work. When you're designing a character, well, anything, it's important to try like all the things. Throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks to make sure that you have like the strongest character you can. Okay. I haven't used these watercolors that many times, so I'm gonna test them a little bit to make sure I remember what color everything is. Nice dark brown. Lovely. There's also this sort of brass, and I do have non-sparkly watercolors too that I will probably have to use. I just really like sparkly watercolors, okay? It just is. It's a part of my personality. That looks almost like a brown, doesn't it? On top. Try mixing them together over here real quick just to see what that would look like. Interesting. It looks almost reddish. Look, how pretty. So those are the colors I'm going to focus on for now. Huh. Now, shifting away from enchanted forests and stuff, which I think are super cool and I'm practically going to be writing like an entire story about. I don't actually live near that many forests. And another biome that I think is super cool is, the coast, beaches. And that's another area I would love to write a story about. And because of that, I've been considering the stories I already read that take place in those areas. So, how many of you are Pokemon fans? Probably some of you. Um, my first Pokemon game and one that made a very strong impression on me was Pokemon Sun and Moon. So, this is a game that has a really unique kind of vibe because it takes place in such a friendly, warm climate. And the people there are undeniably, they're so kind. It feels like everyone knows each other and they're friends or family. But also the actual Pokemon, everyone knows this generation is the one where the Dex entries went kind of slasher film, especially the Mega Evolutions. And I don't necessarily think this was like planned, but it's very interesting to me because you live in a location that looks beautiful and idyllic, but it also, it has scary stuff happening. There's just powerful animals and monsters that could hurt you everywhere. So, what I'm interested in doing is having a story where there's like people who live on the beach, on islands. They're dealing with this stuff all the time. And not only do they have to worry about how beaches work. If you don't know, they're kind of mobile, like sand moves around. Beaches don't look the same all the time. They can erode, they can be tricky to live on. And there's just animals, there's creatures that will just like eat you. So, one of the reasons why people would have to like be kind and work together in this story world is to survive. And In the real world, I think animals are super cool. One of my favorite things about Pokemon is when it ends up showing me something about the real world that I didn't know about. Like, I didn't know for a while that there was like a newt or a frog or something that can like fracture its toe bone and then it has a sharp edge it can use as a weapon. That seems to have it's the rib newt. That seems to have inspired Paul Day and Weeper. That's super cool. So I think it would be super cool to have a story that's inspired by the wildlife, the animals, and the places of real life, but it's taking them in like a fantastical direction. I don't know what to call that story idea though, so I feel bad because like I talk about my story ideas on here all the time. They don't have any names, so it must get confusing. Since I already had the story idea about like sailing and astronomy and cosmic horror, I might combine those. I might have, the story be about sea monsters and exploring and learning as much as we can, but at the same time, there's stuff you don't know. That's just how it is. I am not used to watercoloring because I love it, but I haven't done it like every day in the past, so I'm learning as I go. I've seen some people paint on fabric. I never thought of it, but it looks beautiful. I think I'll probably give her brown eyes, but I thought of making them green too. I like in stories where like when someone is like sick or they're close to dying and they start seeing like ghosts or like the Grim Reaper is there and then they like talk to each other for a minute and then like they get better. It's like, well, now you're permanently connected to the spirit world a little bit. Like, does this say death to any of you? I forgot to give her ears. Should I give her ears, chat? Does she really need ears or is she like a snake? I might add some green to this design. Like, I thought about adding maybe flowers to her antlers and stuff to make it clear that she's part of the forest. But I could also just have her like appear in locations where there's lots of nature. I'm not sure yet, but I think this color scheme works pretty well. I might make these antlers a bit of a darker brown too. I'm not sure I want them to be like the exact same color as the rest of your skin. I imagine her being like made of wood to be clear, like this is all tree branches basically. In like in a more detailed drawing, I would probably like pick out all my different shades of brown from my normal watercolor set, but here I'm just going for like a quick idea. Maybe I should have let that dry first. I forgot. I forgot. All right. All right. Now, I actually don't usually paint, say, landscapes very much, but I might try and do some monster designs. Like even if it's just for fun, I I really like thinking about that stuff and I want to try and get it, out of my brain and onto the page. For example, recently I was thinking about Scolipede, like a normal person would do. I was just thinking about Scolipede, the Pokemon, Google a picture of it. And I was thinking about how at one point in time there really were centipedes that were that big on Earth. And they didn't eat meat to my knowledge. They were herbivorous, so humans wouldn't have had to worry about them if we were alive at the time. But it's really cool to me that if you look in the past, you can find all these creatures that seem like monsters if we had them today, like the Meganora, for example, just a giant dragonfly. There were all these animals that used to be so much bigger. And again, even if they didn't eat us, they were very, very good at eating plants or smaller insects or whatever their diet was. And it reminds me of how in space we have things like there's some galaxies that formed when the universe was super, super young, and they're still here today. So, similarly to living fossils in zoology, we can look at those galaxies and go, oh, so this is what galaxies were like when the universe was first forming. And I think it would be really cool in a fantasy setting to have like some species that are still around from like the start of the world, or maybe there's some individual animals that have lived for millions of years, like maybe like a dragon, or you know how turtles can live for hundreds of years. Maybe they're like rock creatures that are alive. And we could look at those to find out about the history of this fantasy world, like how we can look at fossils today and go, oh, that's what animals were like in our world. And this is right now, this is all pretty much just for fun, but it's something that I love to think about. So I hope to do like an official project about this stuff one day. Move this to the side so it can dry. I've seen other people point out that Scolipede looks sort of like a horse too, and I wonder if that's intentional. It holds itself up sort of like a horse, like how Dragapult holds itself up like a mama crocodile. I think real scorpions mostly keep to themselves too, unless somebody like intentionally annoys them. Bad idea, by the way, guys. Don't go around annoying scorpions. A little while ago, I went on a trip to the aquarium and I took a bunch of pictures there. So I do want to use those as well. Something else fun that you can do with like fantasy monsters is you can take something that's very obviously rooted in reality and like exaggerate it. For example, a scorpion's pincers are usually not this big, but drawing them this big is fun. And you can do that when it's a story. Reminds me a little bit of the Futakuchi on the lady with the mouth on the back of her head. I don't actually know how many eyes scorpions have. I also love it when there's creatures that look like they're made of like crystals. It's so pretty. I kind of thought that's what Terapagos was going to be because it's like a turtle and it's kind of a rock and it's been around for a long, long time, you know? But it's weird how little Terapagos does in Scarlet and Violet and how little the whole Area Zero stuff ends up actually mattering. I don't get it. And honestly, the answer is probably just mismanagement and competence, unfortunately. Have you seen that creature from prehistoric times? It's got like five eyes. It's crazy. It's also really fun to me to think about when creatures were like kind of still forming, back when back when complex life forms were first appearing. A lot of things look really strange. Like if you've ever seen the hallucigenia fossil, it looks almost like a scribble someone drew. That's really cool to me because I think a lot of life forms hadn't decided exactly what they wanted to be yet. Now I'm trying to draw a trilobite. I remember I was in a science class once, and that was one of the first examples that the professor used to talk about how a lot of times we see like living things and rocks as being very different. But then you get creatures that use minerals and like things that are technically rocks, like chitin, chitin, to form their shells. Or there's this creature where I think its eyes are technically made of like a rock. And they're not as separate as they might seem. I think that has something to do with how life started to form, is like permutations just kept happening and happening, and some of them ended up being alive. Did the hallucigenia have eyes? Do we know that yet? Isn't there only one fossil of it? It's crazy how things we might take for granted, like conventional sight, that's not something all creatures have, even today. And it technically is convergent evolution, all the different species who did figure it out, because there are other creatures that don't need it because they live in a super like at the bottom of the sea. Maybe they can't see light anyway. We haven't looked at a ton of siphonophores, but I think they're really cool. So I want to try and draw those more often. This doesn't really look like legs to me. I'm trying to draw a creature with lots of legs. I used to live in a place where there was silverfish, and those were some of the most horrifying things I have ever seen. I think why are they so big? I want to know why they're so big. Why do they have so many legs? I wonder if humans have like a evolutionary reason to be kind of scared of bugs. Because you see them like around rotting food, for example. So maybe we associate them with being unclean. All right, this is already starting to wig me out. That means the design is effective. I think their legs are also like flatter than this, but I'm trying to draw a side profile, ready for your close up, your side profile of being a silverfish. Imagine being born as a silverfish. Like that's your lot in life in the animal kingdom. I would be embarrassed. Mm. It makes it look too tall. I know these things do have eyes in real life, but in a fantasy setting, it could be fun to give them like less developed eyes or otherwise make them look like prehistoric. I wonder if it would help if I made it look like this was moving. I think silverfish usually they're like their legs are proportionally longer than this. I think their bodies are longer too. I'm not really worrying about references right now because I think it could be fun to dig into like the memory of a creature and that how that affects how people see it. But if I wanted to do this more seriously, I would basically have to look at some silverfish. For some reason, these like to live in sinks, at least in my experience. They seem to like being wet for some reason. No, like swamp creepy crawlies, yuck. They had longer legs than that. It was crazy. I would usually send my cats to eat these. Their legs would get like shorter as they got up to like the head too, and I don't know how they did that. That seems crazy. Like if some of my limbs were just like shorter than the other, I would be so freaked out, but they're used to it. They almost look like bones too, even though they have exoskeletons. I think they had like a thicker body too. Okay. I don't know why they look like this. They look like a scribble. And realistically, it's probably effective. Like if you have lots of legs, that allows you to skitter around and move really fast in the animal kingdom. It's just, you know, gross. With animals like dinosaurs, we're obviously learning more about them all the time as our technology evolves and our our knowledge evolves, but it's fun to think about how that affects, like, memory, and it could be fun. It makes you think of Paradox Pokemon and how they look like something someone imagined up, you know? Like how there's the Pokemon literally called the imagined Pokemon and then just never gets brought up again. It could be fun to talk about creatures that seem like they change with people's memory, or if maybe they correspond to how people imagine them. Like if people think of them as scary, they become scary. But if they think of the creatures as normal, then they become kinder. Real silverfish have really thin limbs, and that made them freakier to me. So that's what I'm going for. The way these move is so freaky and scary. Okay. I feel like their legs were still kind of somehow bigger, but I don't know how to explain it. When we look through our telescopes and we can look up, 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 and far, far away at old, old things, it's like we're looking back in time. So it could be fun to write a story about doing that with animals. Like the further people explore, they find older creatures or fossils from older creatures, and or even individual animals that have lived for millions and millions of years, and they can look back in time even if they can't literally go back in time. I had a textbook in college that said the universe itself is a sort of time machine. I think that's just an absolutely wonderful way of looking at it. I think dragonflies are really cool. They come in so many colors. And I don't know a ton about them, but I want to learn about how they can like hover. They're really like, as far as I understand, most creatures can't do that. They can't hover or fly backward, but dragonflies can. For wings, big, big eyes. If we look at dragonflies now, for example, they're usually pretty small, big, compound eyes. But if you look in the past, they were like, I actually don't know exactly how big Meganora was. They were gigantic. big head. It's got 6 legs because they're insects. Like normally, you normally don't. We think of dragonflies as like cute, or they peacefully zoom around in the lakes and riverbeds. Then if you go back in time, there's the freaking Meganora with its giant eyes. Okay, I was trying to make this one cute to show the modern dragonfly. And then I was gonna draw another one that showed how they used to be like bigger. And I realized this kind of looks scary, so we're just gonna work with that. There is a character that I draw on here sometimes named Merla, and I know I want her to be the protagonist of this story about sailing and learning. But I haven't decided a ton beyond that. Recently, what I've been thinking about is how, like, not everyone has the same experience. Like, some people just have sharper hearing than others, and you just have to believe that. And it because it's true, it's a thing that happens. So, for example, people with like sensory processing disorder, like if I tell you I can hear this person whispering and like a normal person couldn't, I'm telling you the truth because that's how my ears work. My ears work differently. And it reminds me of how in astronomy, a lot of times we have to go, okay, well, we can't see this thing. That doesn't mean it's not there. Visible light is only a tiny part of the universe. So we use our other tools to detect things and we go, well, okay, even if we can't see this, it's still there. So what I might do with the story is have Marilla be someone whose senses work differently or who otherwise is getting told like, oh, you're wrong about your own experience, you know, gaslighting. We So she's someone who loves to like learn and explore and try new things, but not everybody like trusts her or believes in her. And she would have to learn like, well, like you can't force everyone to like trust everything you say, but they should trust you, even if even if everybody else does, even if everybody else doesn't, she should be able to like trust herself and like it's okay if your experience is different from other people's experiences, it's still real. I feel like the last time I drew her, her hair was super complicated. So I want to try and simplify it a little bit. Now I'm trying to give her a big braid. Gonna adjust that a little bit. Trying to give her like little flyaways to show where her hair is just slightly escaping from her braid, but you don't want to make those too complicated either. In character designs, it's important to have simplicity so that it can be drawn over and over again, like if you're animating them, or just to make them easy to remember. If you make something like too complicated, then the stuff that you don't need is just going to be distracting. If your brain gets too much information at time, if your brain gets too much information at one time, it just kind of it tunes some stuff out. That's how brains work. It's like watching a Michael Bay movie. Let me give her like extra curls. Not sure. Not sure. Yeah, sketching just a little bit of her torso for completion. I'm gonna go for like a corset or stays look, but it's just like a vague idea right now. I do not know a ton about how clothes like that work, so I need to do some research. Something else that occurs a lot um, with sensory processing disorder and people like teaching you not to trust your own experience is obviously the autism. So that's something else I might explore with Marla is the experience of having like a strong interest in something, which her could be, sea monsters. They're super cool. And unfortunately, there are people who think that having like a strong interest in something is bad, as for example, the Pokemon fandom finds Nemona's strong interest in Pokemon battling bad. It probably wasn't intentional, but her experience looks a lot like a neurodivergent person's. Or it can be like hard to remember like, oh, I need to ask about other people's interests. And like that's happened to me. I wouldn't intentionally say to myself, oh yeah, let me just talk about my interests and ignore everyone else's. It's just hard to remember like, hey, not everyone likes drawing as much as I do. Like my sister loves dogs. So I remind myself like maybe I can ask her if she learned something new about dogs today, or what's her favorite kind of dog. I wonder if I should make her hair a little more like undone. It's just so it does look like a solid piece, like show little flyaways. It's not the first protagonist I've drawn with a braid. It's not intentional, guys. I just think they're fun to draw. I don't remember what color eyes I've given her every single time. I think once I gave her brown eyes, but another time I gave her sort of blue-green eyes, and that could be fun to try again. Basically, Marla would be the protagonist of this story where people are living on the beach and there's like wild creatures, prehistoric creatures, things no one understands. And she's trying to learn and explore stuff because that's what she's interested in. But at the same time, maybe there's things that we just might not get. There's a lot of stuff that humans don't get about our universe right now. For example, we think currently that about 68% of the universe is made of dark energy, which we cannot see and we cannot touch. That's why we call it dark energy. We basically think there's something out there, but we don't know what it is. It looks a little too unkempt. Another thing that happened with my experience with neurodivergence is when I was much, much younger, I'm fine now. I was like, I would be so interested in my hyperfixations that it didn't really occur to me to go on like play dates or intentionally seek out like making new friends. So I'd just be like, I want to watch anime or like, I want to learn to draw manga. And I didn't intentionally say to myself, like, ha ha ha, never make friends. It just wasn't high on my priority list. But that just kept happening until eventually I ended up being pretty lonely. So something else I might explore with Marla is sometimes you need other people in your life. Like other people can be really cool or friendly. And this might be something that I have to like discuss with other autistic people, neurodivergent people in general, is like, does the special interest you have, depending on what the special interest is, does that affect how people treat it? Because my my main interests weren't things that were seen as like academically useful. So that wasn't really seen as like a badge of honor, but Merla's interested in sea monsters. That's like zoology, that's science. So would people think that's cool? Would people praise that? I don't know. Geology council. Going for a kind of cream on the sleeves here. When I was a really little kid, I was also a big reader, and that was something I got a lot of attention and praise for. So it was something that I like really valued a lot. And that's something that I might have Merla do too. Like what she would be reading is just like the Monster Compendium or something. And people are like, "Man, aren't you a little young for that book?" But she would be like, "Well, it's about sea monsters. That's what I'm interested in." And I actually don't read as much as I used to, but when I was little, that was one of the reasons why I kept reading was adults found it super cool. Adults would would be like, "Wow, you're such a good reader for your age." And especially because self-esteem problems appear so much in neurodivergent people, it was something that I felt like I had to keep doing. There's today's drawing. No, she's looking. It's the autistic stare. A little while ago, when I was painting on here, I kept yapping about Vivi and Koza from One Piece because I'm a weeb. But one of the traveling companions, like I imagine Marla going on a journey where she has to like travel and learn about stuff like an old-timey explorer. And I feel like it would not be safe to do that alone. Plus, it's better for the story if she has at least like one person with her. It's important to have other characters for your protagonist to bounce off of. So the idea I have is she should have a traveling companion who like helps her out and assists her doing things or backs her up who does not have the autism. And this character would be someone who's on the outside of her situation, so they can kind of see where she's different from other people, but they're also making the effort to go, okay, this person's different from me, but you know, that's real. I'm going to take that seriously. as opposed to other people she's met who have gone like, "Oh, she can't really hear that," or, "Oh, she's making that up," and this should be a big deal, this should be what everyone's doing. I just think it's important to have that kind of dialogue between the main characters, so that's someone I wanna try and sketch a little now, and then I think we're gonna be done for today. I imagine people having a lot of, like, rugged just scars in the story world just because there's a lot of creatures, that get you. I don't draw a I feel like eye shapes are really important, but thinking of unique eyes or eyes that show the expression of your character can be really difficult. This character, glasses, which I don't draw very much. I'm practicing. This is about the face shape I'm going for, but I want to make it a little narrower. Not sure exactly what kind of personality I want this character to have yet. I don't necessarily want this like scar thing to be a big deal. Like it just happens sometimes. People get wounded or hurt. If you've ever seen the real Koza for One Piece, who's a character that I think is cool, he has this very specific hairstyle that I feel like when I draw it, it looks dumb. So I'm trying to figure out what else to do. I think it would be fun to have a character have like the kind of like long jacket and glasses like he does, but what do you do with the hair? I draw it, it looks bad. And I like drawing ears in before I finish a face because it helps me point to like where the hairline needs to be. Looks almost bald. It looks a bit better. First time I drew this character, I gave him like a kind of ponytail. I might try that again. Oh no, I almost forgot something when I was painting Merla, real quick. She's got a little mole on her face. There we go. Thank you. Um, my voice is still recovering from the sickness. What color hair do you think? We could try like blonde. Could try like kind of like really light blonde, like being out in the sea or in the sun. Because even if you're not on the sea, you go in the sun a lot, that will probably lighten your hair. It just is. Okay, I'm gonna fill this in quickly and then do like a smaller drawing with longer hair. If you live in some tropical areas, a lot of times people will have kind of lighter hair because they're in the sun so much. If they move there from somewhere else, a lot of times their hair is not used to it and it just gets kind of bleached. There are also many people that I know who deliberately grow their hair out, even though it's like 90 degrees every day. And so you see a lot of people living in Florida, for example, with like really long blonde hair and like a ponytail. So that could be fun to try. Okay. Might try brown eyes too. That was my calendar. Hold on. I'll fix it once I'm done here. I've drawn a lot of people with this kind of low ponytail hairstyle before, so I don't want to get repetitive. I know people with hair just like this. Don't draw rectangular glasses all that often, but I want to at least give it a shot. There we go. That's better. Let's try and fill this in. I don't work with neutrals all that often. I tend to use really bright colors when I paint, but it could be fun to intentionally give these characters lots of like browns, tans, yellows, kind of earthy colors, and see what I can do with them. Okay, now let's fill in these. Kind of pastels. I'm not sure if I'll keep this pastel look for the final design, but it's fun to play with. I don't want this guy to look too old either. He's Merla's age. He's a young adult. He's struggling, you know, not all the time, but still figuring stuff out. I might go for a kind of light brown with this hair too. I'm gonna try that. Quick, adding some curls. May add another tiny curl here. I've drawn glasses from this angle before either. This is going to be first try. Okay, let's see how this would look. I do also have several colors of orange that I might use the next time I draw this character. I'm just not necessarily trying them today. Is it the color that's called auburn? It's really pretty. I think it's more rare in real life, but I like it. Not sure about what kind of like bangs either, but I'm trying a bunch of different things. I feel like this looks almost a little too academic. This is a character that's going to be like exploring and learning new stuff, not just reading. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave off for today. But I hope you guys had fun because I know I have fun painting, and it's something I really want to do more of in the future. So keep your eyes peeled for announcements for future streams and stuff, and I will see you in the next one.